Alright, before we get started here, super quick, I am recording on a new setup here. I got a different PC from my old Relic. So if there's any video issues at all, which I'm hoping we'll have smooth sailing, that'll probably be why. For the next week or so, might be a little rocky, but I'm hoping that we'll just, start off strong, end strong, no problems. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about Batman Telltale Season 2, which is Batman the Enemy Within. It's a game that I've wanted to get my thoughts out there on for quite a while now, but I've just sort of sat on it since finishing it and thought about it, I guess, and I needed a little bit of a break from reviewing Bat games to give this, a fair shot. And frankly, this game really did impress me a lot. So let's look at 5 things the game did just incredibly well and overwhelmingly right. And the first one that I have is definitely that you get to choose what type of Batman you want to be. Now, this is something that the first game sort of marketed itself on. It does a fine job of that. I really do enjoy Season 1, but Season 2 blows the idea out of the water. There's more times and elements where you get to choose, actually, do you want to be Batman or Bruce? Which approach will work better? Do you want to stay in this form for longer, essentially, or undercover, or whatever? There's a lot of decisions here that actually do affect the gameplay, which is something we will get into over the course of the video. But it's not just what sort of Batman you want to be either, it's also what sort of man you want to be. Do you prioritize the greater good over your own moral code, or vice versa, or do you meet somewhere in between? I mean, Batman is obviously someone with strict moral codes, and yes, I know he's a man who dresses up as an animal and goes out at night to fight crime, but he still almost sociopathically follows his rules that he sets for himself. He does not deviate from them. It's his MO. And there are times in this game where you are asked if you are okay throwing that out for 10 minutes in order to do what needs to be done, or if you just say no, and you stick to your guns and something bad happens because you didn't change it. I mean, it is something that is stressful and frustrating, but in a great way that expands on this character, and I think Telltale did a great job of including those moments and decisions in this game. The second thing I loved in the game is that it actually ditched one of my things that I really disliked from the first. That was the point and click / drag detective elements from the first game. I don't like those at all. I mean, it was really just like, oh, click on this, connect it to this, trial and error. Or, you could not trial and error it. Like, people were like, oh, well, you could just figure it out. Yeah, you can. You can just figure it out. You don't need to trial and error it. But I think the fact that you could just brute force that system already showed that it didn't work at all. And frankly, sometimes the things you would connect to each other didn't really make any more sense than the ones that you would try that didn't connect in the first season. This season, thankfully, gets rid of that. They just go with the point and click element if you need to find something in the environment, and there are still a few detective sections. I would say that a third game would certainly be a happy medium. I would like to see some more detective elements, but I don't want to see them incorporated in the way they were in Season 1. I think that was just painful and boring and not a great way to get player interest. This game was able to actually just toss that out, go with point and click, go with decision-based storytelling, and sort of expand on detective elements in dialogue itself versus you just walking around aimlessly clicking on things in order to feel like a detective. You never really did feel like a detective, I don't think, in the first game, and at least in this game they dropped that weak version of that system. I also was really impressed with the wide array of villains here. I mean, the first game has some villains, not a lot, and frankly, I think the main antagonist is pretty boring. She was okay. The Arkham... Oh man, I always forget her name even. Lady Arkham. I was going to call her the Arkham Lady, because she's just not very memorable and not interesting, and they tried to create something new, so props on that. But I'm really glad that for this game, they went with more established characters, while also, creating a few of their own for side characters. Really, they do give their own interpretations of classic Batman villains, whether that's Riddler, whether that's Harley Quinn, Mr. Freeze, Bane, everybody here. Everybody is given an actual different origin to some extent, and it's turned on its head enough that it's not a direct ripoff of any other Batman property, but it's also pretty true to who those characters are. And I think a good example of that I can give, and I try to do these without giving away endings or anything, so I'm not going to do that, but if you look at someone like Harley Quinn in this game, she definitely takes more of the role that the Joker would normally take. I mean, she is more of the alpha. Even in the relationship with her and John Doe, it's almost like she is in charge. But I will say, she's still, to the soul of the character, she's accurate. I mean, you have this damaged psychiatrist who really has given into all of these temptations and this psychopathy in order to escape from pain. I mean, this is the same thing that Harleen Quinzel does in the other interpretations. It's a different form of it. And I think if you're going to make changes to a character, it does need to stay true to that soul of the character. It needs to stay true to the heart of what makes that character who they are, or you've really thrown out everything that made them that person. That's what this game does with a lot of different characters, and I frankly felt like it did it with all of them. The only one that I thought maybe could have used a little more work was someone like Mr. Freeze, because he's just given a backseat role the entire game, but he's still done really well, and I'm impressed by pretty much everybody here. There wasn't anyone who ever took up screen time where I was like, ugh, can we please move on? Like, I'm tired of this. It just didn't happen. Telltale was able to write a cohesive story that encapsulated all of these different elements of Batman and of his villains and of Gotham City and rolled it all into one, even pulling in Amanda Waller and doing so like in a natural way. I mean, that is something that's impressive. It's something we don't see that often in the Batman continuities, other than say Arkham, which does it to, I would say, a lesser extent even than this, since it doesn't branch out into Waller and some of those other things very much. And I guess the DC animated universe, the old one, it did a really good job of doing this as well. Sadly, we don't see it as much anymore, but it was nice to see it here. I also love that they fixed the problem of choice. Telltale, in my opinion, as a company, always had a problem of choice. Instead of giving you choice, they were content to give you the illusion of choice. Make you think that what you were doing mattered, even though it really didn't in a lot of ways. It was just very linear. Nothing had impact in terms of your decisions, and you would basically make these decisions throughout the game, and they would act like it mattered. Like, oh, Clementine will remember that, or like, oh, Kenny hated that. I mean, so some of those from The Walking Dead, like they'll do stuff like that, but then it just doesn't ever come up very much at all. And that's not to say those stories are bad. It's just that they act like it's some big decision-driven narrative. They even go as far as to say, like, this game is designed to change and adapt to how you play, blah, and it's like, that's a big criticism I've always had of them, is how they sell their game is not how their games actually are. This game, however, is very different depending on how you play it. There's a lot of parts that won't be, sure. There's parts that they have very scripted that will just fall under what they want the game to be. But there are so many spots in different episodes where it's like you will end up in a totally different situation, sometimes a different location, depending on what you do. I can think of, well, without getting super specific, there's one element in terms of Bruce Wayne, and I will give like a little spoiler warning here. We're going to get into a bit of a spoiler for the middle of the game here about Bruce Wayne. There is a point in the game where you can choose to stay undercover as Bruce Wayne, but people might get hurt, or you can give that up, you'll probably get hurt, and you go back to being Batman, and people probably will also get hurt. So it's this idea of like, okay, well, rock and a hard place. What do I actually do? And depending on what you do, the next part of that episode plays out entirely differently, just like completely differently. And even the final episode is almost completely different. You will end this game in an entirely different place, going up against an entirely different version of a character, depending on your decisions. That's incredible. Like, that's something that like the aspect, I'm like losing my words, like the scale that they went to for these decisions in this game is unparalleled in terms of what their company put out until now. It's frankly, in my opinion, the most impressive Telltale game I've ever played for that reason alone even. My final thing that I loved in this game, it's something you guys mentioned from Season 1, but I don't think he's in it very much, even though he's charming. That's John Doe. John Doe is incredible. He has got to be my favorite Telltale written character of all time. He progresses over the course of the game, and he changes, and he goes through phases, and no matter what happens to John Doe, whether he goes one direction or another, whether you succeed or fail with him in certain regards, you will feel like it is your fault.
It felt like there was a little Harley with a halo on this shoulder telling me not to do it, and then a bat on the other whispering, "Just get it, John." Or did you have the halo and Harley the horns? You must run across this in your line of work. How do you deal with doing something good when you might be hurting someone you love? Because it certainly didn't feel good. Quite the opposite, in fact.
I serve the greater good, John. I can't let my feelings get in the way of that. If someone I care about is on the wrong side, that makes them my enemy.
A black and white world. So much easier to parse.
It doesn't matter what you do. However John Doe ends up, you will feel like that's kind of on you. And the game does a great job of making you empathize with this character. I think that video game writing can be hard to do in terms of creating empathy between a player and a fake character in a game. And you could say that about anything, but books, they have a lot longer, a lot more time to do it with. You can go through book series, very low stakes in terms of financial input, in terms of getting that out there. Games, you might get 1 or 2 games, you might get a series depending on if you're selling really well. You have only certain amounts of shots to do this with, and the storytelling medium in video games is a lot newer. So you have a lot of the people who are established in storytelling have historically been in books and film. And so now we're getting to this point where video games are really able to make you care about certain characters, but they don't all do that. My point is that Telltale is able to do that so well with John Doe. Create a sense of empathy, create a sense of wanting someone to be your friend, actually caring, actually thinking, oh man, I want the best for this person.
Don't go, Gordon. I've got a city to say. Please, Jim. You have to let me in. I can't. It's too much. I'm the best friend you have in spandex or whatever nice suit is. You can trust me. What if I grew a mustache for you?
Batman! Hi! Hello! So, John. My name's John. John Doe. You don't know me. Well, we actually did cross paths once, but,
What did you overhear?
I didn't hear anything. I just got here, I swear. Oh, this is just... what a pleasure. So nice to finally meet you. It's just a handshake.
Nice to meet you, John.
Wow, quite a grip you've got there. You must squeeze a stress ball a lot.
It's not something we see all the time, and I think it really does need to be praised and celebrated, because that is something that video game writers should all be striving to do. If you are making a serious story you want people to take seriously in any regard, you need to make people care about your characters, and I can't say enough how well Telltale is able to do that with the character of John Doe. So hey, these are the 5 things I absolutely loved from Batman Telltale Season 2, Batman the Enemy Within, whatever you want to call it. I love this game. I frankly love all these things. And if you haven't played this game, I can't recommend it enough. Even if you're not a fan of Telltale, but you're a big Batman fan, this is a game for you. I have historically been very critical of a lot of Telltale stuff, and I love this interpretation. I love the game, and I love the writing. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to check out the links. We've got Patreon, we've got Reddit, join the Discord. Hey, join in on a community of like-minded fellow gamers who are hanging out there. We love all kinds of stuff. We're comic book fans. We're fans of Star Wars, Batman, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, television, movies, everything in between. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day and stay friggin' awesome, everybody. Appreciate all of you.